We are nearly a year and a half into this pandemic. No one could have foreseen the tremendous impact this virus would have on our social lives, mental health, and everyday freedoms we often took for granted. The interviews and stories that you are going to hear are from real people all around the world. Although each story is unique in many ways, they all share a common theme. They all share one of survival. These are the first-hand accounts of life in lockdown. These are the Quarantine Chronicles. This is the Quarantine Chronicles, hosted by Justice Hall. Hello, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How's it going?
All right. Just trying to understand this first day of real lockdown and see how strict it is, right?
Yeah. So welcome. Yeah, it's about to be a lot different, it feels like.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been through it before when I was in Vietnam just for like 4 weeks. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to a second tour of this for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, so let me do a quick intro and then we'll dive into it. So
okay.
All right. So everybody, welcome back to another episode of Do Your Life Justice with another segment of the Quarantine Chronicles. Today we have Josh on the show. Welcome, Josh. Can you tell us if there's a nickname that you like to go by? Let me know that. But tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you're at, and what you do.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Josh. Right now, I'm in Istanbul, Turkey. Everybody calls me Josh, but everybody locally calls me Jason's double. I'm an English teacher, life coach, and actor, and everybody around here knows me as Jason's double, though. Yeah, long story.
Nice. So, English teacher and actor, so that's something that we have in common. Because I actually started teaching English at a private school, and then I transitioned. Well, my background is in acting. I'm a theater major, and so acting is my passion. And so I transitioned from teaching English at a private school to teaching online to doing voiceovers to get back in touch with my acting. Okay. So with you doing English, are you teaching online? Are you teaching in an institute? What's your English background there?
Well, I work for myself. I lived in Russia for 11 years, and after working for schools there, I developed my own business and just started doing my own, private stuff. And I've been working with clients from Russia for years now. So I work independently from wherever I am in the world. I was in Vietnam, all my clients were in Russia. Now I'm in Turkey, all my clients are in Russia. So I work remotely and online, which is extremely suitable for our current global situation, right?
It's like, oh, thankfully, I'm not impacted too much. It sucks on a social aspect. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. So when you're teaching, you're able to tap into different or work with different companies, when it comes to teaching. Because I understand I was teaching students in China and also students in Russia when it comes to my English and stuff like that. So how has the lockdown actually helped? Because there's more students at home, there's more people with free time. So has it brought more business, or has there been an impact on your teaching?
I think it ebbs and it flows in general when you work freelance or independently. And when lockdown happened in Russia, the quarantine, I lost some of my clients because of their financial issues. But at the same time, I got a lot of new clients because they were stuck at home. They're like, well, time to develop myself. I want to improve my English skills. So yeah, I went through maybe a period, which is nothing unusual, where I didn't have so much work. but then it all surged because of the pandemic, of course. I mean, it's always like up and down like a roller coaster. So yeah, I can't say it really had a detrimental effect on my finances and my life.
Okay. So that's the English side. Now let's jump over
Mhm.
to the acting side. Have you seen a change or a pause in anything when it comes to the acting work?
Well, it's pretty new for me, so it's even hard to analyze that. It all happened by chance, and because of this one thing I did, it opened up some opportunities and new doors in Istanbul. I mean, it's like the Hollywood of the Middle East. So there's a lot of productions being done here, European, American, local, and all kinds of stuff. So, I worked on that film. I doubled for Jason Statham, made some great connections, and I mean, have that bullet as like the first thing on your acting resume. That goes pretty far, Guy Ritchie movie, Jason Statham video double, and so on.
Yeah,
So
you can't go wrong. Jason Statham is a real badass.
he's a real cool guy. I mean, he's a real down to earth guy. I mean, it taught me. I learned so much on that movie. Working with those actors like Hugh Grant was there, and Jason and other big names, and they're all just like the most humble, down to earth people. Usual. I mean, it broke all the stereotypes that I had about Hollywood, mentality and maybe arrogance and all that stuff. It was really good.
Were you filming during quarantine or during the pandemic, or was this?
Yeah, it was January and February, and during that time, it was like curfew more or less. It was like the whole 9 o'clock in the evening thing. There was no bars and restaurants or anything open, so we ended up living in a 5-star hotel, and it was like we we lived there for 2 months. We had restaurants and bars in there that we could use, and it was kind of like isolation, but in a good way, because we had a beautiful view of the sea and the mountains, and we had everything that we want when it comes to having a social life and going out. And I mean, there's a jazz bar there, rooftop bars and everything. So we were still able to have what the general public couldn't have at that time, but it was pretty strict. We had to get PCR tests 3 times a week. I mean, my nose was raw after 2 months of that, Monday, Wednesday, Friday test, because if one person tested positive, it would collapse the film possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's millions and millions of dollars gone. So we had to live in an extremely strict way, and on set, always in a mask unless cameras are rolling. And yeah, it was kind of brutal. 16 hours a day in a mask.
Yeah, I can imagine. I remember as you were talking about that, Tom Cruise. There was an issue. I can't remember the movie they were filming. I think it was the new Top Gun movie.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
They were someone. They weren't a critical actor or anything like that. But someone was not following the protocols, and he went off. And so, like you said, if one person gets it, it's like a domino effect. And so you can't afford for people to be lax, But like you said, go on.
COVID security on the set. There is one. The production was like half Turkish, half British. So like on the British side, there's one. Well, he's actually American, and he's like our COVID guy. Every 2 hours, we change our masks on the set, different color. Then like every 2 hours, you get a new color, and everybody has the same color. So he goes around every 2 hours and cycles the mask. And there's another guy too. So if you have your mask down, he comes by, boom, he's like, "Hey man, I really need you to put your mask up. Like this is from Miramax, and we have to do this because it could jeopardize the film." So it was really strict on set. But yeah, it's for a good reason, I can say.
It's necessary.
Lagging, or I'm lagging.
Yeah, there was a slight delay. It started freezing a little bit. So branching out from the movie set, looking at communities and societies as a whole, are you a proponent or an advocate for wearing the mask and the social distancing, or is that something like, I don't think it works, I think we need to try something else? What are your thoughts on the mask and the social distancing?
I'm an advocate for it, for sure, man. Like I lived in Vietnam when the pandemic struck, and in Vietnam there was an epidemic years back, and the government was really strict about, like, you know, masks and all that stuff. And while living there, when the pandemic was like destroying the world in Vietnam, we had maybe 300 infections total. And there wasn't all this political garbage about, I mean, they weren't making it political, and everybody understood that everybody is united in this idea that if we all wear masks for about 4 weeks and we do this voluntary isolation, we'll get through this situation quicker. In Vietnam, that's what we did. And I think it was all of April 2020, pretty much had to stay home, but it wasn't mandatory. The government's like, here's what you should do, and you need to wear masks. There was no, like, I mean, argument or debate or protests or conspiracy theories about it. And after that month, I mean, we were back to restaurants and bars and shopping, traveling the country, and enjoying beaches, just as we were before, while the rest of the world was suffering because so many people are like, I can't breathe in a mask and stuff like that. It's like, dude, suck it up. Give it some time. Yeah. And if everybody, like, in my opinion, if everybody is on the same page about this, masks up, I mean, is disciplined, we're going to bring the world back to where we were before in a much happier place. And yeah, that's my point of view.
I think that's the most important thing, because people are so resistant to being told what to do, you know. And I saw an article, I didn't read the details of it, but it was saying why the first world countries are making the pandemic last longer than it needs to. And I think part of that is because
it's an embarrassment, really.
Exactly.
It is embarrassing.
I expected so much more. It's like, come on, man. But it's because people don't want to be told.
So my clients will ask me, is it true? Yeah, my clients, like, is it true, Josh, in America that Americans believe COVID isn't real? And I'm like, yeah, like, I don't even know how to explain that. I don't claim to be American. That's why I've lived abroad for 20 years.
At this moment, I'm not American. I'm, you know.
Yeah, man. And it's like all this stuff. Like, is it true that Trump said that, like, COVID, it's just the flu? It's nothing big. I'm like, yeah, pretty much. And lots of people believe it, and they follow the leader because they support him. And we're going to see the domino effect from this. And I mean, it's not a good. I think it's getting better now with the vaccines rolling out in the U.S. Of course, that's some positive steps forward for sure. But before that, it was a nightmare. Even in my home state right now, in my home city, Muskegon, Michigan, there's a state of emergency. The hospitals are overfilled with people with COVID, not enough incubators and all that stuff. In my state specifically is like the worst in the USA. It's a hot spot. As a lot of these people are like, it's my right to not wear a mask. It's my right. It's my business to allow people in without a mask. And it's like, come on, guys, like, just do it. It's not the governor trying to rule you all. Yeah. It's the governor trying to bring stability back to the state, to the country, so we can all enjoy life and be productive and have our jobs again. And so I'm just fed up with it.
Everything is not a conspiracy, you know. It's like, and I understand the freedom aspect. I don't like wearing a mask. It gets hot, you know, and especially if you wear glasses, you're fogging up your glasses and stuff like that, and everything like that. So I understand the resistance towards it. But it's like, if you want to get back to normal life,
suck it up.
Yeah, exactly. Suck it up for a little bit of time. The longer you resist, it's like a child throwing a temper tantrum, knowing that there's something that they need to do, but they're so resistant, and it just prolongs the process and makes it a lot harder and everything than it needs to be, because you're so resistant. Just, okay, I'm going to wear the mask. I'm going to follow the protocols. I'm going to socially distance. I'm not going to gather in large groups for this period of time. Let's just see. That's the thing. It's like, you can't give me a guarantee.
You can't tell me what my rights are. You can't take away my rights. I'm going, what rights? Your rights are not to put other people at jeopardy. Exactly. Your rights are not you have to be considerate about those around you. And it's not your right to tell them they have to stay home either and them to be in prison. It should be a community effort, and everybody needs to get on the same page. I can say, like in Vietnam, I mean, it's community effort there. It's like, I mean, it's a communist country, which has its benefits. It's like socialism, stuff like that. And the mentality of the people there, they all understand that if they work together on something, they're going to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
But you look at, like, in America, where it's divided between, left wing, right wing stuff and all that other craziness going on there. There's just this divide, and there's not that unity, whether it be with racism or with politics. And there's always just like two sides.
Everything's politicized. It's like you can't come at anything in good faith and just think, okay, this person is talking specifically about this issue. Everything is looked at with skepticism. Like, you have an ulterior motive. You're not speaking to me, because you genuinely care. You're not telling me to wear a mask because you genuinely care about my safety and my health. You're telling me to wear a mask to take away my liberties. And so that paranoia is a problem that we have in America. And that's why we're seeing third world countries, second world countries actually getting better and getting back to real life and normal life. And we're struggling in the first world. Like, you have all this technology, all of this money and everything, and you people just can't seem to get it under control. And it's embarrassing. As an American, it's like, man, we look like a bunch of idiots right now.
The laughing stock of the world, I would say, really. And that's been for the past couple of years, since the beginning of the COVID, for sure, even before. But it's a very bad image to have.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping that we can get to the point to where, one, we get enough vaccines and vaccinations where people are safe. And so the people that are resistant and saying, it's my freedom, I can endanger you all I want, those people become irrelevant. And more, or some of the people from that side realize that, okay, let me just stop being crazy, stop listening to the insanity, and follow the steps. Because it's like, okay, it's my freedom, but can you just walk outside naked? It's your freedom, but you're not going to do that. Why? Because there are repercussions, there are consequences. So, but you're okay with, okay, I'm going to walk into a store, even though I know that there's a mask mandate, I'm just going to take my mask off and just endanger people. Once these people start being held accountable, here's a fine or something, so to where they understand that there are consequences to your stupid actions. You're free to do whatever you want, but you also have to understand you have to accept the consequences of those actions.
Exactly. Definitely. And there has to be some kind of the punishment to fit the crime, right? To enforce the rules, there has to be some kind of fine, which is maybe stiff enough to make people follow these guidelines for now. Like here in Turkey, it's with this new lockdown, I guess it's like a 3,000 lira fine if you're out in the street and you're not a tourist. So, I mean, that's like what, $450 roughly, I'd say, something like that. So that's a pretty big chunk for residents, especially here in Turkey. So I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, because most people are making 3,000 lira, and to just be like, I'm not wearing a mask, I'm not following the protocols. Okay, boom, I got to pay 2-3 months rent, for that mistake.
It's a lot of money for some people, and I think that's the proper way to deal with to enforce the situation, to make it better, is make people feel it,
make them feel that pain. So during this lockdown, do you have like a daily routine, something like, okay, life is boring right now, there's really not much to do, this is something that I'm keeping myself occupied? What do you do on a daily routine?
Oh man, I don't know. In the mornings, I usually wake up, meet with my clients online first thing. I have maybe 3 clients a day, maybe 4. It depends on the day. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Quite flexible now with our current situation. Then I do my home workouts. I do like some HIIT routines or whatever it is from home. I got a jump rope. I have an outside terrace here, for private terrace, so that's pretty nice. I can go outside, do my workout there, get some sun, jump rope, do my cardio. come back in, maybe make some dinner or make some lunch, whatever, depending on the time. Usually the client in the evening. Netflix is pretty handy nowadays. Netflix is great. An endless library to keep us occupied. PlayStation 4, that's also another good toy for a man to have right now. And catching up on some books that I've been meaning to for a while. I've been traveling around with them and just have not sat down and opened them up. But next 3 weeks, I expect to get through a few of these books. And yeah.
What are some of the books that you're reading?
Homo sapiens, or Sapiens. It's by this Israeli scientist, and it's about how like we've evolved to where we are today, humans. Yeah, very interesting perspective. And he's got a second one. It's called Dos Something, but it's about like the future of mankind. Mm. And I'm ready to crack that open. I have this fantasy book called Malice by this author. It's like a 6-part series. And some about Viking history and mythology. Interesting theme.
Oh yeah, those all sound pretty interesting stuff. You know, especially the Sapiens, how we are, you know, how do we get to where we are now, and then the future one, where do we see ourselves going? Is it based on where we are now in the trajectory, or is it more like fantasy kind of?
I think it was written like before the pandemic, but it's about like it's not. I wouldn't say it's fantasy by any means. Like there's a really important part in the book Sapiens I read, and it's about how wheat enslaved us, and like it compares wheat and working and being stuck in one place to being a 9-to-5 job. And it's like before we domesticated wheat, we were nomads, and we go from place to place. Once we exhausted the land of the resources, we go on to another. But once we settled, started growing that wheat, then we had to like, you know, take care of that wheat, water that wheat, pick rocks out of the ground in order so that the soil was, you know, more fertile or whatever. And then because we settled and the population grew, we had to grow more wheat. And if another tribe of people came, we couldn't just run away if they're bigger and more dangerous. We had to stay and defend, and people would die. And so this whole process like multiplied time and time again because of the populations. And the wheat basically enslaved us and made us become, well, like what we are today, sitting in one place, working 9-to-5 jobs and not having maybe that freedom to just get out and go somewhere. A really interesting perspective. And for me, I understand it. Except for me, I'm like, I can go anywhere and I can work from anywhere at any time and any place. And that's great. If I want to fly away to Vietnam for 2 months, hang out in the sea, work with my clients there, nothing's stopping me except for COVID. But if I had that 9-to-5 job where I was working in a schoolhouse, I would have to plan those vacations or those travels for a very specific time. And I couldn't be so flexible. So yeah, it gave me a perspective like I'm not a man who, you know, grows wheat on a farm. I'm still like the nomadic type.
I'm the hunter. Yeah.
The hunter.
With the 9-to-5, you got to get permission, and then it has to coincide with what's convenient for somebody else, vice the freedom to do whatever you want. And like I say, that's the beauty of the online world now, being able to connect and train and teach on your schedule, you know, being that independent freelancer, I think is good in this era, this time, you know, so people have that freedom. So what is one thing that you're looking forward to being able to do after the pandemic?
After the pandemic or after the lockdown? I don't know. After the pandemic, I do want to get back to traveling more. I think like vaccinations are going to be mandatory for international travel pretty soon. I'm not vaccinated yet because in Turkey, foreigners were at the bottom of the list. But definitely getting back to traveling, living maybe from place to place for 6 or 7 months and then coming back to home base, which would be Istanbul. So yeah, I can't really say like what am I looking forward to after the pandemic? What I do now is what I usually do, except for the traveling part. So yeah.
So life hasn't really changed too much, except for you've been just restricted to Istanbul.
Yeah, more or less, I'd say. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's a good thing. That's you enjoy the life and everything like that without the stresses and everything. Has the lockdown, the pandemic, had any impact on your mental state or anything like that?
I think it did. Maybe I didn't realize at the time, but it definitely like, how to say it? Looking back, yeah. I think it distanced me from people in some ways. I was so focused on like avoiding COVID or whatever it is and just trying to be safer. And maybe I lost track of a few things in life, important things. And maybe it caused some problems with my relationship at that time because I was thinking more about our safety and not as much about our relationship together. And I think like that whole idea of safety for her and for me was at the forefront, and our personal relationship wasn't. And two, I think being like living in that situation with COVID, our social interactions with other people, I mean, they're not enough, right? And of course, being in a relationship with somebody, you have to have more when it comes and to meet with friends and stuff like that. And if you're always stuck in the same room with somebody, I mean, I think whoever it is, you're going to have some issues from time to time. So yeah.
There's a reason why they say absence makes the heart grow fonder. And with the pandemic, the domestic violence has gone up, depression has gone up because there's so much monotony and repetition, and it plays and affects the psyche and everything like that. So have you learned something about yourself during this time? It's like, oh, I didn't realize that about myself, having so much time in isolation.
I think I became more productive because I had more free time, and I just I started writing a blog on this website I have for like my English teaching life coach stuff, and I haven't done that for a while now. But I was doing some videos of our travels in Vietnam because we could still travel at that time while I was there. So I was blogging, doing these videos. We ended up doing a TV show for Discovery Channel too while we were there. And it definitely opened up some opportunities, like surprisingly, being in isolation. And I mean, many people complain about they're going to be so bored in isolation, this and that. But in real life, before a pandemic, everybody complains they don't have enough time for doing something, right? And they're like, oh, I don't have time for this because I'm so busy with work and this and that. But guess what? When they're in isolation, they complain because they have nothing to do. And it's like, think about it. Everybody can take advantage of that time to benefit themselves in some way. Whether that just means like de-stress and relax, to develop yourself in some way, whether it be like studying a language, learning something new, working on a second career. I mean, learning how to invest. There's so many things you can do with that time. So I definitely learned that to take advantage of the opportunity, because you're not always going to be in that situation in life where you have that much free time. So
yeah, that's a good point. We're always complaining about the other side. Oh, I don't have any time. Oh man, I have too much time. And it's like, stop complaining and take some action. Do something.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just do it, So
that's I think that's the message for for everyone is this time we can look at the pandemic and say woe is me and cry and whine, or we can say, okay, this isn't ideal. I don't want to be in lockdown, but since I am, what am I going to do about it? What positive thing can I take from this? What positive thing can I do in this tumultuous environment? And
for sure. There's so much that everybody can do. Hold on, my computer's there it goes. I mean, yeah, there's always something you can do to develop yourself in some way. The internet is a huge resource. I mean, you can find anything on the internet, online courses. I took a camera course to learn how to take better photos with my phone camera. It was like one of the most useful things I've learned in the past 6 or 7 months. It's like, wow, I learned so much about lighting, side lighting, backlighting, angles, and so on. And now my photos, everybody says, wow, you've improved so much.
You're a real professional photographer.
I mean, yeah, it's like just my phone camera, but it helped me so, and yeah, it changed the way I do photos, and it changed the way I look at taking photos. And there's so many online courses you can take and things you can do to better yourself. So yeah, I think that's something we should all take away from it, is do something to be productive, to benefit you, and try to find some happiness and enjoyment in like the idea that you have more free time and you can do those things that were on your list that you couldn't get done before.
Yeah.
Now you can probably do them.
Yeah. I think that's really the big thing right there.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, out of every single thing that you've probably done in the past year and a half, all the positive things, you mentioned learning how to take better pictures on your phone. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because so many times people think that it has to be something grandiose. It has to be something like out of this world, or it's nothing. There's nothing to celebrate there. That's a simple thing. And people need to understand, celebrate those small victories. Celebrate those simple things that it's like, hey, somebody else might think this is just trivial and stupid, but I think it's pretty cool. And I'm going to look at that as a small little light in this sea of darkness. And that, I think, a lot of people can benefit from. Just, hey, what is the one little simple thing? Hey, I learned how to freaking say 5 words in a foreign language. Pat yourself on the back for that. And every day, every week, whatever, set those little small goals. You still have the big picture, the big vision that you want to attain, but you got it. There's checkpoints. Hey, I reached a little checkpoint.
I think something that's important too when we're talking about goals is like, so sometimes people set goals which are kind of unreal. If you set those small goals, that's what's going to give you satisfaction, enjoyment in the end. But people set crazy goals that are like impossible to achieve, or they can't see that result. You have to set goals which you can see, which you can feel the results from, and get that cycle rolling, of course. So yeah, small steps and a great ending, I would say.
Yeah, you're thinking about a cross-country trip. You're not going to get there on 1 tank of gas. You got to stop at some point. So you say, oh, I'm going to drive 500 miles. Hey, I made my 500 miles. Hey, fill up, recharge, and then keep going for another 500. But you can't just take one big leap. I'm going to go from point A to point Z. There's checkpoints in between there. And I think that's where, a lot of people fall short. I can't get the big picture, so I'm just not going to try. I'm just going to quit and give up. And you shouldn't. So, in a world, a life of many possibilities and hopes and dreams and visions, take time to appreciate those little simple small ones. So
good words, my man. Good words.
Yeah. So I enjoyed this. This was fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good time for sure. The social interaction.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So so do you have any? And we'll wind it up quickly. Do you have any like friends and family in Istanbul that you're able to see on a regular basis, or are you here kind of by yourself?
Man, I've been here since October, but when I got here, we had that lockdown, and that happened like through December. Then I got COVID in December, and the lockdown ended. Or wait, maybe there still was lockdown. I can't remember. Anyways, I had COVID for 3 weeks.
How was that?
Honestly, it was probably one of the worst things I've felt in my life. It was weird how I even detected it and then understood I had it. I sit on my couch, I would sit up, and I just started feeling dizzy. Every time I sat up, my head would like, and then I breathed in deeply, and I felt this itch in my throat. And I was like, oh, that's a symptom, I think. But I was like, no. And that same day I had been in the gym, I was doing squats. and I had this problem in my lower back, and like I couldn't bend over, and I felt like I pulled a muscle in my lower back, which I tweak it sometimes. I have this muscle issue from the military, back issue. But then all of a sudden, like I just couldn't bend at all. Like my body was stiff as a board, and this pain was just like getting worse and worse. So I remember I went to bed that night. Now I was laying down on my back, and I had so much pain I had to turn to my side. And on my side, the muscle pain was so bad. I just kept turning and turning and turning and turning all night long. The next day, they did a mobile PCR test at my house, came back positive, and I had like this muscle pain for like probably 10 days where I could not bend over. The only comfortable position was for me to stand up. I mean, even sitting down was just miserable. And the tiredness, the fatigue took me over. That was pretty nasty. One day I woke up and I went to have some coffee and it tasted like water and sand. I was like, wait a minute, that does not taste like my cappuccino. And then I went
concerning,
and I was like, oh no, don't tell me. I'm losing it. And I think I ordered some baklava because I love baklava. And I ate it, but I was like eating crispy wet paper. And then I realized, okay, there's no more taste or smell. I think that lasted 11 to 12 days. During that whole time too, I was constantly tired. Didn't really have a temperature though. And I didn't feel like I was going to die. You know, I didn't have that kind of issue. But I was just so tired, I could barely get out of bed. And the muscle pain was just excruciating. Like, imagine if somebody was just ripping your muscles from your bones, more or less. It's pretty much how it felt.
That's a serious visual. That sounds extremely painful.
Yeah, it was like pretty torturous. It truly was. I'm glad I got through it. In the end, got antibodies, so I'm good until June, I guess, supposedly according to the doctors. And then I'll be trying to get that vaccine, I guess.
Yeah. So all of this you had to go through by yourself, or like you were saying,
with my wife at the time. Yeah, she had it too. She had it maybe a bit worse than I. She didn't have muscle pain, but she had a temperature, some other coughing issues, different than mine. It's kind of weird. We both had COVID, but our symptoms were not even similar.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point for people that are out there. The anti-maskers and the anti-vaccines or vaccine community. You may not have symptoms, or your symptoms may not be as severe as someone else, but that doesn't mean that you're not transmitting,
right.
and affecting someone else's immune system in life. So and that's why I wanted to share these stories, is so we can understand that in a time we feel isolated, we're on lockdown and we can't leave the house, or we only have to be around a certain group of people, but we're all suffering together,
Right.
And so we need to sacrifice some of our own, comforts for the greater good.
Because, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we all need to sacrifice to get something back in the end of this, to get back to normalcy. I think that's the main thing. And people are acting like victims about it, like it's only them. However, the whole world's going through the situation. And I mean, to me, it's pretty wild. In the US, people look at it as a politics thing. It's like, oh, it's because people are trying to make the president look bad or something. Are you kidding me? Do you think all the countries in the world are saying like COVID is real and we all need to wear masks? And they're all working against the current president at the time? Like, to me, that's just mind-boggling. Like, no, it's not the whole world working against the USA. The whole world is like masking up and doing this because they understand the science and they know it works. I think Southeast Asia in general is a perfect example. If you look at how low the infections are, like in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, because they wear masks there in general for pollution, right? Like, there's like 20 million motorbikes in Ho Chi Minh City. People wear masks due to pollution. Yeah. But because of that discipline they already have, you can just see how it doesn't spread as much.
Yeah.
And
Go on.
yeah,
Go on.
it's perfect evidence. And it's like there's no pushback from the people because they're already wearing masks when they're on the road. So it's okay, we just have to wear more. And if you look at the statistics in that part of the world in comparison to, the USA and whatnot, and the UK or wherever we have all the anti-maskers, there's a very big difference. The disparity is ridiculous. So.
Yeah, and I think the same thing was going on in Africa, since they had dealt with Ebola and all these other diseases and pandemics. They had a better system in place to tackle COVID once it surfaced there. So yeah, that's we have to learn. Freedom is beautiful. The Western way of life is wonderful, and many people envy it. But
yeah,
we can't let that. We can't be arrogant and think that our freedom is our protection. Because diseases don't care what country you're in. It doesn't care what you're able to do. Oh, I can go drinking at a bar and blah blah blah, and I can wear whatever I want and say whatever I want. Those are my freedoms. Well, yeah, COVID doesn't give a damn.
Yeah.
So
I think the idea of freedom, though, is so subjective. Of course, it is to all of us. While like my definition of freedom, and I think yours is probably different in some ways. But I think the idea of the American freedom and my rights, it's like the whole limitless idea of that is ridiculous to me, because people think that their rights and their freedom is more important than everything else around them. And that definition is so easily twisted and manipulated to fit somebody's subjective opinion or agenda, that you can make that word fit however you need it to be to live your life how you want without care for others. And I think it's kind of screwed up to say as an American, but sometimes, I mean, I've lived abroad since I was like 18 years old. I went to the military for 8 years. After that, I lived in Russia for 11 years, Vietnam, and now Turkey. And I've lived around, and I can say, like, sometimes I think American freedom is too much. And it's kind of strange to say, but there needs to be some controls to keep people under control.
I definitely feel. I come from a military family, and I was in the Navy myself, for 6 years. So I've never lived in the same place more than 4 years. So I definitely understand. Once you're outside, you're able to kind of look from the, from an out of body experience. It's like, man, I love my country, but we got some jacked up ideas from time to time, and some stupid acting people. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, look, and that's too, like, living here, like you're in Istanbul too, right? And you look at what's going on back in the US, and it's just like, man, on the outside looking in, you can just see things so differently. Yeah. I mean, like, Facebook has just turned into a toxic dump of hatred and propaganda and fake news and lies. And like, I mean, the only reason I keep my Facebook now is to stay in touch with family, but it's just become a toxic environment, and it's just awful, awful, awful. So yeah.
So we'll hopefully the social media will evolve with the times, and we'll get to a less toxic, foolish environment. And hopefully with this lockdown, people will find something, like you said earlier, something positive and creative and productive to do to move the needle forward, and everything like that. We're stuck in this environment, but we don't have to be stuck in this mindset. We're able to move in a better direction and work for all of us to get back to normal life. So yeah.
I think too, like, all the fears about the lack of trial with the vaccines, some of that I can understand, but the way I look at it now, it's like, okay, if we all get vaccinated, we all die, so be it. But if we all get vaccinated and we all get to go back to normal life and enjoy life as we were before, that's great. So there's two things that could happen. If we all do it, we're all going to be in the same boat. And I think that's, to me, that gives me some kind of comfort in knowing, like, hey, if it's this toxic, terrible virus that takes us over and kills us, it's the end of the world anyways. And we'll all face that same fate. But the end result too, these vaccines that work, and it's going to bring us back to happiness and travel, opening borders, going back to school again, having kids play sports with their friends on organized teams, and just doing those things that we loved growing up doing. That's even better, right? I mean, to me, that outweighs the small chance that the vaccine could be so harmful.
Exactly. The pros far outweigh the cons in many respects, you know, getting back to normal life, which is what we all want. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
You know, and for everybody out there, thank you guys for watching and listening. Share your comments. If you want to share your story, feel free to hit me up. You only have one life to live, so make sure you do it justice. This is the Quarantine Chronicles, hosted by Justice Hall.
I would like to thank all of the wonderful and brave people who have trusted me with their stories. Although there are billions of people on this planet, the past year and a half has made many of us feel alone and isolated. My hope is that by sharing our tragedies and triumphs, we can begin to reconnect and understand that we are not in this alone and that we are all in this together. If you would like to be a part of the Quarantine Chronicles community and share your story, click on the interview scheduler in the link description below. Winston Churchill said, "If you're going through hell, keep going." We're not going to let this pandemic beat us. Let's keep pressing and keep progressing. Justice done.